And welcome, ladies and gentlemen, back to the Valley of the Judged. I am your one and only gaming monk, better known as Mildra, and with me, I have my good brother here in the temple, the man of 1,000 flames. I'll come up with a better nickname eventually. Good brother Flame Scion.
I am the guy who is related to D&D adjacent stuff because, yes.
Yeah.
There isn't really much else to do because no one else will do it.
Yeah, and of course we are, after our brief foray in the between-season tradition, we are back proper with, this time around, Fateforged. And one might think, wait, this is a 5e spinoff. Why are you doing this? There's a method to the madness, especially since this is from Studio Agat, who previously won a ton of awards with Shadows of Esteren, a very good medieval dark fantasy, which may get its own day in the monastery at some point. And there was also the fact that they were, for 7th Sea 2nd edition, they were the French translator, and now they're going to be the lead developer for 7th Sea 3rd edition, which Sizer and I covered a few months ago when it came to the quick start for that. And they've got some interesting ideas, plus I've always enjoyed the visual style of their work. Now, a lot of what we're going to be covering here is less the core mechanics and more where it diverges. So there is going to be a fair bit of skimming, because when it comes to the core mechanics, it is going to be familiar. But, as I've said many times, there is a method to the madness. And we'll be going through multiple books, some of them in less detail than others. The first one that we're going through is Adventurers, which, unfortunately, even though it has an index, it doesn't have bookmarks. And just to make sure I wasn't talking out of my ass, I grabbed the latest version I have off DriveThruRPG, and it still doesn't have bookmarks. Which, for a 400-page core book, that is a problem.
That is, as we call it, no bueno.
Mm-hmm. Now, this is a game that is built on the Open Game license. There was a brief time during the OGL fiasco where they made several of the Fateforge books free, and it's had a few expansions. It is using 5e as a base, but as the expansions went on, especially the Creatures books, this isn't exactly 5e in a different coat of paint. And it's something we will get into, because we have the core book, which is 400 pages, which they further split into the Player's Guide and Spellcaster's Guide. But those aren't full books. They're more of taking what's in the core book and splitting it off for people who are spellcasters or just for the players. Um,
So basically, they are the nerd books.
hmm Like the player's guide is just taking the stuff in the core book and taking out all the stuff that's GM favoring. Uh, and of course, there's Grimoire, which is the full spell list. Then the multiple creatures books, creatures 1, 2, and then Draconis and Netherworld, as well as things like Cartography of Aeana. As I may as well bury the lead right now. This game is not playing halfsies regarding setting. It is upfront about where it's taking place. But we open up with a forward, which is going into what it is. So it says the series Fateforge Song of Aeana has been designed with 5 books at its core and several supplements to provide official scenarios. The setting is the world of Aeana, a exotic, epic, colorful universe drawing from various mythologies as well as from the sword and sorcery genre. Players will undertake great adventures, fighting dangerous monsters, protean corruption, and insidious threats. The pages will come will make will mention other books. Grimoire goes over the rules related to magic, corruption, and madness, and lists the spells available to those who have experienced the awakening. Arcana covers supernatural phenomena, planes, gods, demon princes, and magic items. Aeana describes the world of Aeana, its history and civilizations. Bestiary is a collection of the wondrous and deadly creatures your characters may meet. The last 3 of these books are intended for the leader's use only. And at the end of the volume, you can find a glossary which you can refer to. I think something changed because to my recollection, there is no Arcana book. And as far as Aeana, I think that became the encyclopedia books, which there are 2 of them. There was also a book all about dragons called Draconis, and there have been a few adventures done. Including a starter set called the Call to Adventure and a handful of adventures ranging from levels 1 to 3 to 6 through 8, as well as the Legends of Aeana collection that goes from levels 3 to 15.
I think what they did is because it says that all the stuff about spellcaster magic and everything like that is on the grimoire.
Mm-hmm.
I think they took out the spellcasting from there, and that's why it became its own book, which is the spellcaster's guide. And then grimoire
Yeah.
was just dedicated to everything else.
Mm-hmm. Spellcaster's Guide. Some of the stuff within it we will be covering in this series. But as I mentioned, and actually, I do have to correct myself. The stuff in the Spellcaster's Guide is not in this book. So that is something we'll delve into later on. But
yeah, it should be like a more shortened version of the grimoire because it has some similar things, but it's way less beefy. Like the grimoire is about 100 pages, and the spellcaster guide is like 60 or at most.
Yeah. But at the very least, we don't have the full spell list in sandwiched in with the player's handbook.
Thank God for that.
I remember getting on the case of Pathfinder for the fact that it decided to squeeze together what is normally 3 books into one big ass book. Uh, I did the same thing when it came to Traveler Mongoose Traveler Second Edition, because traditionally Traveler's core book has been 3 books: a player's book, a GM book, and a setting book covering the Third Imperium.
Right.
In their infinite wisdom, they decided, oh, we'll just do one big core book, despite the fact that Traveler has an extensive life path system, which is going to take up a lot of space. So it would be a wise move to have that in its own book. And because of that, the Traveler from Mongoose's second edition doesn't have a lot of space to talk about the setting. And I know some might go, well, I don't use the Third Imperium, I use my own setting. If I'm being honest, when a lot of times when people say that, they don't actually have a setting, they have a bunch of ideas. And even if you don't use the setting in the book, in the canon book, having it is a good way to measure what sort of world the game is built for. This is the frustration that I've had in the past with D&D, where it wants to play halfsies regarding what style of fantasy it is.
Yeah, and because of that, we have like 60 million settings.
And
I miss Mistara.
there were it's not only an issue of setting, it's also an issue of style of fantasy.
Yeah, because Gygax's Greyhawk is like sort of low fantasy, I think.
Mistara and Blackmore were both very high medieval styles of fantasy. I know I could get into particulars between Mistara and Blackmore, but that's another conversation. But then you have Spelljammer being, well, Spelljammer.
Spelljammer, yeah.
Dark Sun, one of my favorite settings actually, that is far more in the sword and sorcery and almost fantasy apocalypse given the state of things.
Pretty much Mad Max with fantasy in a fantasy setting.
Yep. Then of course there's Birthright, which is still in that high medieval, but places a much bigger emphasis on the party being rulers of a fiefdom, sort of a precursor to what we'd see with Kingmaker.
Yeah.
And the kitchen sink that was early Forgotten Realms, but fantasy can go into a lot of different directions. You can go into the epics, you can go into high fantasy or low fantasy, you can go into the more dark or horror-based styles of fantasy. You can go into things like sword and sorcery, or the more gonzo elements. And when a given game says, "Oh, this can run all kinds of fantasy," I'm like, if you're gonna do that, then you have to commit. You have to make explicitly clear that you're going to be on the more modular side of things, and a game like D&D is not willing to commit to that. I had the same problem with Fabula Ultima, where it says, "Oh, you can live out your JRPG fantasy in this," and yet it's very clear that it's trying to be Final Fantasy VI.
Right.
Or 14.
Yeah. I never played myself Fabula Ultima, but I have heard about other people say the same.
Yeah. You've probably heard the expression, "Don't piss on my head and tell me it's raining."
Yeah.
But with Fateforge, we clearly don't have that problem because they make very clear in that paragraph this is meant to be sword and sorcery. But after that, they go into an intro to role playing games, which I am skimming because I think that'd be redundant for us. But the modular
But how do
system.
I know? How
Hmm?
do I know what is a D20? Not like we have these things already.
You can just feel the stare from across the internet, can't you? But right after that, and some damn good art, we go into one of the really big divergence from Core 5e, and that is the modular system. Now, I should note whenever it's referring to leader, that's basically their term for GM. Um,
Yeah.
It says Fateforge makes use of a modular system that lets each leader define the atmosphere they wish to create for their stories through 5 categories: action, dark, gritty, intrigue, and mystery. Each of the symbols listed below indicates related optional rules. In addition to
I
these symbols,
absolutely love this.
others are included throughout the book: Awakening, Dragon, and Elusive Magic. They cover a variety of optional playstyles and variant game mechanics. Before you apply them to your character, ask your leader if they intend to use them. So, action is straight up heroic fantasy. This icon indicates all the rules that offer epic options and put the character's feats and achievements at the forefront. Awakening: whatever your character's class is, in order to be able to call upon their spells and magical abilities, they must have experienced the Awakening. So you can spot them easily. All powers and abilities related to the Awakening are preceded by this icon. Character creation provides more information about the Awakening. It's also it's a nice dividing line where you can say, okay, if you want to do a non-magic campaign, then take that stuff out. Dark. These are optional rules related to horror, madness, or corruption, making a dark fantasy atmosphere. Gritty. Use these options if you want harsher and generally more realistic gameplay, resulting in a tough playstyle where nothing will be made easy for the PCs. Quite the opposite. Intrigue. Optional rules with this icon focus on the interactions between the characters, on the schemes and plots between the factions, and on anything that accentuates the roles of the characters and encourages their interpretation. And mystery. This icon designates rules dealing with mysteries, supernatural elements, and anything related to secrets and arcana. And elusive magic. If the leader makes use of this optional rule, the players will not get to handpick their spells during creation and evolution of their characters. Learning new powers may require finding a mentor, and they'll go into this in the classes chapter. And the last icon is not actually part of the modular system. The dragon is to highlight important information that should not be skipped. I like this because it makes clear what players and GMs should use if they want to lean in certain directions.
Yeah, and it also helps because you're not using something, you just take it off, and it's not like you'll have to find a way to somehow ignore that, like some stuff in D&D.
Mm-hmm. But first, the other part we're going to be getting into today is just the character creation section, which there is going to be a fair bit of skimming. Where you go into character creation, the Fateforge, which is a entity and what it means to be a fate chosen, blessed by eternity. The world of Ayana, the species, character history, classes, languages, and customization options. Now, when it comes to the step-by-step part of character creation, I appreciate the presentation, but there is going to be a lot of skimming we do in this part.
I mean, it's gonna be the same as usual. Choose your race or lineage, your background, your class, everything like that.
Yep. The first thing they have you pick, and this is something that's going to be in more detail when we get to the World of Ayana books, is your civilization. Basically, where you hail from. Uh, and that is going to and where you hail from is going to play a factor in your choice of race. They call it species, but I don't bother with the whole we need a retitle race. It's like, no, people are going to call it race anyway, so you may as well go with the flow. But each one has a profile, and there are going to be some familiar ones. I do like that they encourage playing a more atypical character, like a half-orc bard or a barbarian gnome. A barbarian gnome sounds like the stuff out of Nightmares.
Yeah, they have the right height to hit where it really hurts, so.
Mm-hmm. And then, of course, background, which is going to work the way it does in core. Uh, they also bring up the proficiencies you get from background as well as alignment. Though I don't think this is going to be all that specific about alignment. After that, you choose your class, and they do a sidebar about proficiency bonus, but that's something we're already familiar with. Step 5 is where you determine whether you've awakened to magic. And because this is a unique spot for Fateforge, this I think I'm going to go into more detail on. In Fateforge's universe, some individuals experience what sages call the awakening, thus becoming attuned to the tides of magic. Is it a gift? The influence of the moon eternity, which dictates the fates of heroes? Holy favor from the gods? Theories abound and mystery remains. At creation, a character has not necessarily awakened. A non-awakened character is said to be dormant. Ask the leader what they have decided for their campaign. They can either decide your character's connection with magic from the list below, or roll a d20 to determine it randomly. So if you went the d20 approach, if you roll 1 to 9, you are dormant. You have not awakened yet, but maybe it'll happen one day. If you roll 10 to 15, you're close to awakening. Your character might awaken in the course of their first adventures, between levels 1 and 3. If you roll 16 to 20, your character is awakened. You're already awakened to magic. You determine when and how this happened. Is it a gift from birth? Did you experience something extraordinary that triggered your awakening? An awakened character is able to use magic. If they have chosen a spellcasting class, they can cast spells, and if they are an elf or a tiefling, they can use the innate powers unique to their species. A character who is not awakened to magic cannot make use of magic powers, whatever their nature. Of course, they may still awaken at a later time. And this sort of idea is something we do see in a lot of fantasy settings, and it's an interesting choice to use here, where we have some measure of explaining, okay, where does magic come from?
I like this system. It kind of reminds me of, I think it was World of Darkness, that I think it was in Mage, that you have to first awaken to be able to use magic and everything like that. But on that is like some really heavy stuff that you can do.
Oh yeah. Then they do go into what awakening is like. A sorcerer might accidentally unleash their first power in a life or death situation, or more progressively over the course of their childhood. A priest prays to their god in the middle of a disaster and performs a miracle that saves the day. A druid meditates upon the world, and carried by the sublime harmony of their environment, they finally feel everything click. Then going into theory and practice, if you haven't awakened but you still want to play a class with magic powers, your character will still learn them as they progress, but will not be able to make use of them. Your character is considered to be dormant. Magic in Ayana is like music. Your character may know all about music theory, i.e. learn a new power, but still be unable to play any instrument, i.e. call upon said power. One day they may awaken and become able to use all the powers they have access to, thus fully realizing their potential. In game terms, a dormant character cannot make use of powers whose description comes with the awakening stamp. And they do mention that in Grimoire they'll be go into the awakening and the workings of magic in more detail. But after that is the setup with ability scores, and this is generated on the standard 3d6 setup, or if you prefer 4d6 and drop the lowest. On the other hand, you can take the point-based approach, which is from a pool of 15 points. And though there are a few asterisks on this, if the GM uses the handicap optional rule, then an ability score of 8 or below counts as a handicap. If they're using the gritty playstyle, ability scores above 15 are off limits. And of course, if you take an ability score when the point-based setup that's in the negatives, you are adding points. And you can set scores below 6 if you want, but that'll only still bring you 3 points. And we have one of our first stamps with restricting maximum ability scores. It can be established that extraordinary ability scores, so 16 to 20, can only be reached by experienced heroes, and thus the player characters can only buy starting ability scores up to 15. Note that increases related to your character's species can still bring your ability scores up to 16 or 17 at first level, reflecting the innate talents of each species and subspecies.
That's really cool.
Mm-hmm. And of course, you do have to assign the 6 scores you end up getting as normal. And throughout this whole thing, they've been building the character of Ted the Deft Charmer, in basically reflecting each step as we go onward. But at step 7, you choose your equipment. Which a lot of this is going to be built off of your class and background, of course. And whatever GP you have left over that you can spend. And take a note of the character's skills and technical details, and then describe them and choose their alignment, which they will go a bit further into alignment in the in character history, but it looks like we are doing the whole good, evil, and law chaos axioms. But I didn't see a neutral yet.
Oh, that's interesting.
I may see it later, but I don't see it yet. And then they do cover the Fateforge, which I think we can get into a little bit. And this has one of the stamps that was talked about earlier.
Yeah, it's the mystery one.
Mm-hmm. So, the Fateforge is integral to Aeonna's mythology. Some say it is contained within the magmatic depths of the world, others that it was built on the hidden face of eternity. Many shamans of Bandiko Mibu believe it can only be reached in dreams. The forge exists under many names in the folklore of civilizations. Stor Smedna in Arlova, Bengel Padai Bessi in the draconic lands of Rachamangekur, and Ukantai in Kani territory, and so on. And good luck trying to navigate that maze, which I'll end up saying it a lot, but I absolutely adore the visual design we have here.
I feel that even a Minotaur will have trouble in that thing.
Mm-hmm. But the Fateforge is said to have many powers, including the one to birth gods. Many scriptures and legends make references to this mythical place and the transfigurations that occur there. And, of course, your leader decides whether the Fateforge exists in your campaign or not. But they do go into a few bits on it. Namely, there are some people who are chosen by the Fateforged, i.e. the Fate Chosen. And what those people can do. But in order to reach the Fateforge, you have to cross the maze that separates its entrance from the forge itself. A sprawling labyrinth that tests the soul of the aspirant under the inscrutable gaze of ancestral creatures. Reaching the forge is an epic feat. There, one can literally reforge their destiny, formulating a unique wish that may transform reality. Its power goes largely beyond what even a wish spell may offer, simultaneously transform the one who intones it into a divinity. This
Give me
event
one
is called...
second, I'll be right back.
No worries. I will hit the BRB for a moment. And we are back, ladies and gentlemen. Hmm?
No, it's nothing.
All right. But the thing, it does go into what the granting is.
Yeah.
What wish someone could formulate before the Fateforge? There's no answer. After all, no one came back from the Forge to share their experience. But there has been auguries and visions that whoever crosses the maze and reaches the Forge will have their wish granted. It certainly follows rules. However, many myths make mention of arrogant fools who, for example, asked for infinite wishes as their granting and were destroyed by the Forge as a result. Likewise, it appears that grantings cannot free the world of certain evils. Despite the horror that it represents and the countless heroes that have fought things like the Canker for thousands of years, it could never be destroyed. The Fateforge cannot kill a god either. For these reasons, some believe the Fateforge isn't as powerful as claimed, and that it is no way an instrument of the common good. And there is a bit of a thing about how a couple people did reach the Fateforge and become gods, but when that ends up happening, any existence of them as a mortal self just disappears. In other words,
you become a god, and then nothing else that you ever did in your life exists. You just disappear from everything.
It goes, in the history of the world, two mortals, memorable figures of Aeana, became gods through the power of the Fateforge. The Morosi conqueror Tamarak and his mother Zonim. Anyone with some knowledge of history knows that the seed of Tamarak's power was entirely eradicated in unclear circumstances, with no witness left to tell about it. Theologians and mystics agree on one thing. Divine apotheosis transforms one's very essence. The divinities that are today Tamarak, called Storm, and Zonim, called Night, are different from the mortals they once were. However strong one's will and ego may be, there is in the nature of the divine something that mingles with one's being and transfigures it radically. And there are a few theories on fate chosen, whether it be the civilization of travelers, or who some theorize created the Fateforged. The idea of a meta-god that is the master of all fate, or the second conscious. And I'm glad that these theories are here to give a bit of, well, mystery to this thing. It's very clear that the Fateforge is meant to be that kind of campaign ender thing to chase. Uh, and as far as perception of the Fate Chosen, which there's almost an implication that Fate Chosen is going to be PCs. In fact, it outright says so. And there are ways that people could view you as a Fate Chosen. Either admiration, especially since it says, for the common man, heroes above 15th level are nothing less than demigods, characters of legend that may one day climb the steps leading to the Fateforged. On the other hand, envy. Those who haven't been chosen by eternity are the great majority of the population and foster envy, if not hatred, towards those who have been arbitrarily granted decisive advantages. By choosing this option, the leader will make the common man's perception of the Fate Chosen ambivalent at best and blatantly hostile at worst. As soon as your character is revealed to be a Fate Chosen, their adversaries and rivals will do everything to oppose them, hinder them, or even kill them before it is too late and the power gap becomes such that they can only acknowledge their inferiority. Meanwhile, the mighty will attempt to seduce and manipulate them. This approach suits a dark fantasy playstyle in particular, portraying a cruel, cynical world where the relationships with the characters are fraught with deceit and duplicity. Or fear. Rulers and guild leaders may initially be happy to find hardy adventurers to solve their problems, but they will be quick to realize that their helpers may threaten their power. Why would these mighty warriors and mages be satisfied with a life of adventuring? Why would they obey? Why wouldn't they kill the elites of this world to sit on the throne in their place? When someone starts nurturing such suspicions, they see potential enemies everywhere. Things are never simple. What used to be taken as a bad joke from the mouth of a first-level barbarian may be considered a serious threat from the same barbarian of 10th level. Fear might lead to seemingly unnatural alliances for the purposes of keeping a growing menace in check, following the maxim, the enemy of my enemy is my friend. Some may also be tempted to hit the adventurers when they're weak. After all, will such an opportunity arise again? For going for this option, the leader will give your character an aura attracting fear and distrust, which will grow stronger as they gain levels. At high levels, your character may arouse mystic terror, similar to how a believer might feel towards a vengeful deity possessed of immense powers.
They're doing this whole modularity thing really well with this.
Mm-hmm.
It's really neat.
Yeah, this was why I wanted to dedicate time to Fateforge. Because if you just look at pure mechanics, yeah, it probably isn't going to be all that impressive. But if you look at the world and the context that it puts in, that is where things get far more interesting. And of course, then they go into the world of Ayana, which is going into a bit of setting, starting with the cosmology of Ayana, specifically its moons. Ayana's solar system as a whole is basically the material plane, according to mages and arcanists. And of course, one can go to the beating heart of the world if they so choose, and some posit that a portal was built there. Creatures summoned by spellcasters first appear here before transported to their temporary master. Which is certainly one way to do it. And then they also go into magical currents and geomagic. Magic permeates the world, but it is imperceptible to most life forms. In many respects, it remains mysterious, such as the way it expresses itself through certain living beings through the phenomenon of awakening. Scholars speak of magical currents to describe how the flow of magic bathes Ayana. Just like ocean currents, they can vary in intensity from one region to another and change as time passes. going from the impressive thaumaturgic halos to the sinister areas of dead magic and burning sap. Geomagic is a characteristic of the world of Ayana, and your leader will determine its prevalence in your campaign. But there's also the horrors of Canker. Uh, what it is shrouded in mystery. Is it a plane populated with abominations? A residue of a failed god that births forth hideous spawns from the abysses? It is basically a form of corruption. So I do like that instead of outright saying it is this thing, there's a bunch of, oh, here's what people think it might be, but nobody fully knows. Which is a very nice touch, I'd say.
Yeah.
Uh, of course, going into things like the Dawn War, as well as the Age of the Fated Kings, which is done through these quotes from either anonymous sources off of a broken epitaph, or from part of an epic by a bard, which demonstrates to me that they have an understanding about what bards are supposed to be more than some people do. uh, but in addition to that, we do have the civilizations of Ayana, and a bit of a D100 roll to see what your character's starting civilization is. Or if you wish, you could go with the Free City, which is you could say is meant to be a neutral metropolis. But each nation or each civilization has its peoples, basically what racial majority or minority is there, um, its particular language and writing system.
I love that world map. It looks
Hmm.
amazing.
Yeah, I think I have a full size version of it, and they expanded several of the regions um, with with the cartography of Ayana book, or not book, more of a collection of it. And I do have a full map. I do have the full map, but it's in PDF form, and it's way too big for me to send through usual means. But I do like that even though I could see some parallels to places in other settings, this is its own beast. And the fact that each has a writing system, although some don't have that. Like for example, a doesn't have a writing system; it has oral culture. Uh, but the Free City, which there seems to be an implication that if you're that you're either from there or have passed through there, is meant to be
Yeah,
this neutral melting pot metropolis.
yeah, because the if you decide to roll in it, like the free city seems to be the one with the highest range to get.
Hmm. You do have or it is organized as a independent republic. You have the Council of Strategists, who are both diplomats and generals, can declare martial law, mobilize troops, order conscription, send ambassadors to foreign countries. Some may think it's odd that the diplomatic corps and the military are in the same branch, but remember, war is just politics by any other means.
Yeah,
Uh, and you have the assembly, where citizens can gather and discuss the future of the free city. Uh, as well, this is also where laws are determined. Uh, and you have the Council of the Guilds, which is open to all trading and manufacturing organizations, meaning that non-citizens can have a seat there. Each group is free to appoint their leader according to whatever criteria and procedures suit them. This institution issues trade-related rules and arbitrates disputes related to its field of jurisdiction. So, in other words, if there is a dispute about a merchant contract, this is where it would be handled. And the Council of the Dragons, it has the representatives of the legally accepted religious groups, and has jurisdiction to judge offenses or crimes committed within the confines of temples. A sanctuary's territory is that of the gods, and even the Vigilant Watch is not allowed to intervene without the explicit request of the priests. For example, if a thief is granted asylum in a sanctuary, they will remain untouchable as long as they remain within its boundaries. Bureaucrats and soldiers in service of the Council of the Dragons wear black and white. So I do like that within just that organization alone, you've got plenty of opportunity for good old juicy drama.
Yeah. This part seems to be like the most expanded upon.
Mm-hmm. And of course, for a place that is so rich, there are criminal guilds, and they don't always get along. And there's like the Tridentine mostly controls the docks. The Rakisa is the main thieves guild, a more disciplined thieves guild. They have a unspoken agreement with the council's district, where they'll help merchants secure information useful to their business in exchange for arrested members usually only having fines. Unfortunately, the Vigilant Watch can't really do much about it because they're too scattered. And then the Veldi Keldara, or the Clay, is one that is kind of a foreign, since they're a Cerulean criminal organization. But there does seem to be this motif of everybody sticking to their particular turf. Of course, then going into some of the things with the region and the remaining civilizations. And now when it comes to the species, a lot of it is going to be very familiar. Modifying ability score, age range, alignment, size, speed, languages. Some of them may have subspecies, as well as doing hybrids. And even with that, there are those stamps that we saw before are present here, like with the Dragonborn, which I am glad that they did it, because Dragonborn really came to prominence in 4th edition, but 5th edition doesn't quite seem to know what to do with them. And here we have something a little more specific as far as how they're utilized, as well as potential mysteries like the fact that white and silver Dragonborn have disappeared.
Oh, that's neat.
Mm-hmm. I mean, but it is a optional approach. And when it comes to dwarves, they call them Dvergen, which just means dwarf in Dwarvish. They make that clear. And again, we have some angles that can be taken if you want to go the more intrigue route with dwarves. as well as subtypes, guardian dwarves and builder dwarves, and Dwergar, but those are the evil cousins of dwarves, and you're not playing as those. Uh, and and when it comes to elves, one of the interesting things that they bring up in the lore part is the mystery, the learning of trance. There's always been the whole thing of elves being able to do trances so that they don't have to do an 8-hour rest, but it's
Right.
never gone into much detail, and here it is. As well as a few other as well as a few other options. Uh, I think one of the and we have a option if you want to go more gritty. Compared to sleeping, the inconvenience of the trance is that it is a voluntary exercise that requires quiet. Whereas one can sleep in short spells during the day without too much trouble, napping during a break, dozing on on a walking horse, etc., one must perform a complete trance for it to be fully effective. Trying to enter a trance in a hostile or stressful environment, aboard a strongly rocking ship, in the middle of being chased or threatened or what have you, requires a wisdom check to which the character adds their proficiency bonus. The DC is at the leader's discretion in accordance with the circumstances. In addition, whereas sleep can be light or deep, trance is always deep, requiring great focus. Trance is therefore a double-edged sword, very convenient but very demanding. That is a interesting way to make trance have some downsides. It also means there might be situations where doing a 4-hour trance might not be the best idea.
Or where they can be interrupted.
Mm-hmm. Oh yeah. But when it comes to gnomes, you do have the mystery of their nature as artificers as well as their merchant side. Uh, and I feel like gnomes and halflings are two other races that 5e doesn't quite know what to do with.
Yeah, as far as 5e is concerned, it's just small and smaller.
Mm-hmm. Uh, though because of the lore parts that we have with the halfling, it's clear that they're going to be more at home in an intrigue type of campaign. You know, with the notes about skillful mediators, city halflings, and the ill-known surefoot.
Yeah.
Uh, and see, when it comes to humans, you have the mystery of the metal of humankind. Though I do like this, I do like what they have here. Declaring a task as impossible or unrealistic will spur them to find a way to prove you wrong. Nations compete to build the most extraordinary edifices, to plant their flag in unknown lands, or to lead the strongest empire, while individuals seek recognition through their achievements or sacrifices. A human adventurer is the embodiment of the taste for risk-taking and the quest to surpass oneself. And we do have some. First off, the art of of what looks like a general in that was really damn good. Uh,
Yeah.
then there's also uh, a thing with when it comes to half elves. And again, this is one of those that is going to benefit in a intrigue campaign. Though I do like that that they have their own racial name in the form of Melis.
Yeah.
In some cases, treating the term half elf as derogatory.
Oh my god, half elf is a slur. You think
And
that if you tell them they're half human, they will take it even more personal?
about as personal as a banga being called a lizard, which, if you haven't played Tactics Advanced, that is a very surefire way to get your ass kicked. But we have a similar thing with half orcs. They have their own term, Berosi. Uh, although the and the term half orc is considered derogatory. Although I think what's interesting when it comes to half orcs is it doesn't is they the design we have with them looks more akin to orcs that you'd see in Shadowrun than the typical Tolkien-esque orcs.
Yeah.
Uh, and there are certain philosophies when it comes to half orcs. Some of them might be Epicurean, some of them might be hedonists, some of them might be Stoics. And going into different forms of it. And we do have another gritty option. If the wound rules are used, you can apply this optional rule. Making use of Relentless Endurance immediately and automatically brings you into the dying state with 1 hit point and 5 levels of exhaustion, all while retaining consciousness. Due to adrenaline, you can ignore the pain of your wounds and all exhaustion-related effects for a number of rounds equal to your Constitution modifier, minimum 1. You can't use this feature again until you finish a short or long rest. And then they go into Tieflings, and Tieflings are another one of those races that Core 5e doesn't quite know what to do with. And also came to prominence in 4th edition. Like, Tieflings had been around as a kind of half-fiend, but 4e made a legitimate attempt to try and make them more than that. But I guess the first thing to notice is the fact that the example art we have with the Tieflings is is not just red skin and horns, even though that's there. It's not nearly as prominent as I've seen in other instances. But there's also the idea that some Tieflings may not even have a direct fiend parent. But also, being able to have a sense of evil and being able to cast thaumaturgy without prep. Though the thing with fiendish parentage I think is interesting here. Instead of just saying, "Oh, one of your parents was a demon," no, we have potential parents and how the child might appear in some forms.
Right.
Which is a very interesting move. And we do have a few alternate rules when it comes to their traits. For example, Dark Instincts, which if you want to use that, they're more tormented beings. And on the other hand, the unpredictability of tieflings, which if you wish to accentuate the mystery aspect, you can use this rule and determine the innate spell list for tieflings themselves. At level 1, you know one cantrip. At level 3, you know one first level spell, which you can cast once as a second level spell. You can cast it again after you finish a long rest. At level 5, you know one second level spell, which you can cast once at a third level. You can cast it again after you finish a long rest, and Charisma is your spellcasting ability for these spells. I like that you're not locked into what spells you'd naturally get as a tiefling.
Really neat. Much more flexible because sometimes you just get stuff that you don't even use. So.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and when it comes to backgrounds, it doesn't seem to exactly be the pick a background and get the package, although you can take that approach. Instead, it's something that's built up in steps. Step 1 is identity, then picking 2 skill proficiencies, then 2 additional proficiencies among tools, vehicles, or languages, then your equipment, then a feature, and then characteristics. And if you wish, you can pick a handicap to gain a feat. And of course, when it comes to the skill proficiencies, they're exactly what you think they are. But I like that each one has a bit of a paragraph going into a potential background for taking that skill proficiency.
Yeah.
As well as for the additional proficiencies like tools and the like, which is one of those things that you have, but for example with gaming set, I've had it asked to me plenty of times, why does my character have a gaming set? Like why do they have a deck of cards or a thing of dice? Which is one of those consequences when you play half-seas with setting.
Yeah.
And a similar thing when it comes to equipment. I do like that they bring that one of the items is a memento. It's not something that's going to give you an advantage mechanically, but I like that they're going into detail about the tools that you have, potential mementos, as well as your clothes. And they've also done throughout this. They've done 3 examples: an artisan, a pirate, and a slave. And in addition, you do pick a feature for your background. Your choice of background does not set this feature. It's one that you have. Although there's only 3 of them: network, rare talent, and revelation, which is a little small. But considering how the background features in 5e don't get a whole lot of opportunity for use,
Yeah.
I'm fine with the approach here. As well as things like bonds and flaws, where they give a set of examples instead of just roll on a table and then bone shots. it's so. And of course, if you wish to take a handicap, uh, you're essentially giving yourself a disadvantage in exchange for getting an extra feat at character creation. And they do provide a few examples. If your handicap is accepted, you get +1 to an ability score and or 2 additional proficiencies. But the uh, the backgrounds that are in the 5e core book are still here. But I do like that there's something you can take if you need a background quickly. If you want to build your own background, you do have that option as well. Which makes for a very nice touch.
I like it.
Mm-hmm. I mean, I'm skimming through the backgrounds that are there because for the most part, they are the exact same backgrounds that you see in the 5e Player's Handbook. Also, it looks like I have to take back the whole no neutral thing because we do have that.
Oh, nice.
Uh, however, it looks like they're not going to try and do the whole thing of whether or not you have to be acting a certain way to be a given alignment. Because we do have a sidebar about how alignment is a moral choice, but an essential part of the nature of celestials and fiends. But it does have the implication that if for example, if a devil ceased to be lawful evil, it would lose what makes it a devil and become a unique monstrous creature. And I also like that when it comes to inspiration here, inspiration is one of those concepts that's a neat idea that was kind of undercooked. We have the heroic option for other uses of inspiration besides just getting a do-over. Like, double your speed for 1 round, ignore exhaustion, remove a temporary mental condition, or reroll a damage roll even if it's lower. Like I said, inspiration, which was always meant to be a reward for role playing well, was always underutilized. And I think it's nice that there are other options besides roll with advantage by spending inspiration. But when it comes to classes, there is of course what was mentioned regarding the awakening. But if there's also the elusive magic rule. Essentially, there are a set of spell tables in Grimoire, and whenever you would get spells, instead of you picking them, you roll on the table and you get what you get. You, at least at character creation, as you level up and get new spell slots, you don't get new spells. You got to go find them, or find someone who will teach them to you.
It's fun if you want to do something that is absolutely random.
Mm-hmm. And when it comes to the different classes, they are exactly. There's not a whole lot of change from the 2014 version. Although there are certain subclasses that are interesting. The Path of the Wizard Slayer wasn't in 5e, and it is built around exactly what you think it would be. You really hate mages, and your combat style is designed to screw them over. Uh, but we do have a return of spell slots, and I will admit this. I've never been a big fan of the Vancian model. The whole spells per day thing. It is something I've tolerated at most, but I've always had issues with it. Although with the cleric, we do have one interesting thing that they delve into. And I know I'm doing a lot of skimming, but crunch wise, there's not a whole lot new. Uh, because of the fact that we're dealing with a specific setting, instead of just pick a domain, we have divinities in two axioms: harmonic and entropic. The harmonic divinities are world, maker, blacksmith, and flora. The entropic divinities are death, frostel, night, and storm. Which is an interesting way to do the deities, I'd say. And yeah, there are still divine domains. There is the possibility of having domain spells be corrupt magic. But the domains that we have are it looks like each of the divinities has two domains they're associated with. The blacksmith has force and sharing. Death has enigma and time. Flora has life and sharing. Frostel has life and time. Maker has aberrance and travel. Night has aberrance and enigma. And Storm has force and travel. And you have to pick which of those two that you go with. So there is a bit more emphasis on the god that you choose to serve or have been called to serve. But let's see, when it comes to druids, it is largely what one would expect. Um, we do have an optional rule about purity and corruption of druid magic.
Yeah, I was actually gonna say that for the clerics as well.
Mm-hmm.
Seems that one of the optional things is that certain spells that you may cast, if you're not of a certain domain, they will corrupt you.
Mm-hmm. Which is treated as an optional rule here if you want to lean into a dark fantasy approach.
Yeah.
And this is even more prevalent with druidic magic because druids are the enemies of the canker. And this does lead to the possibility of a corrupted druid, one that, instead of drawing upon the earth's strength, saps it. And it does lead to a few changes. Uh, for one, instead of meditating in sacred places, you have to pray in cankerous nests. Uh, your connection with animals and fae is replaced with a bond with the ravagers of canker. Using objects dealing radiant damage isn't possible. and radiant damage dealt through spells, class features, or so on is replaced with necrotic damage.
That's really cool.
Mm-hmm. And there are still the druidic circles. And when it comes to fighter, the archetype that seems to get the short end of the stick because of certain whiners, I'll put it that way.
Mm.
Uh, although this I do like when it comes to having a more epic rule. In warm countries, deserts or equatorial forests, for example, fighters cannot wear heavy armor lest they expose themselves to sunstroke and dehydration. A fighter from such an environment can trade proficiency in medium and heavy armor for the unarmored defense feature, which works the same way as it does for monks. It kind of answers the question, if we're doing a desert campaign, why are we in heavy armor?
Yeah, why is the fighter wearing a +3 plate armor, full plate armor?
In the
And then
desert.
you look inside, yeah, and then you look inside, and it's just a charred person, almost like a raisin.
Mm-hmm. I had to wear plate once in August weather. I don't recommend it. When they were finally done, I grabbed a bucket of water and just dumped it over my head because I was just so done. Since you've probably seen plate get put on, but it's not just the exterior plate that you're wearing. That's why it takes a while to get the stuff on or off. But again, the martial archetypes we have, like Champion is the crit fisher as it always is. Blade Bonded is a bit more interesting though. I feel like this is a way to do the Eldritch Knight in a way that feels like it fits this setting.
A way that doesn't suck.
Yeah. Yeah, Eldritch Knight's not that great. Oh. But I mean, one could see some parallels between this and Eldritch Knight, though. I like that one of your weapons becomes magical, what's known as a steelmate. Oh. And a lot of features can only be used when you hold it, although there are a few exceptions. It is considered a sentient magic item. Its alignment matches yours and can communicate with you by transmitting emotions. It also has its own ability scores, which you can increase at higher levels. Throughout your progression, your Steelmate's ability scores, means of communication, and senses evolved on the Steelmate table. If you die permanently, your spirit fuses with your Steelmate, which becomes a full-fledged sentient weapon and embraces your purpose. So essentially, if you die and you can't come back, your attuned magic weapon becomes a full sentient magic weapon. And depending on its ability scores for intelligence, wisdom, and charisma, it may gain additional features. Like higher intelligence will give them more skill proficiencies as well as spell slots. Wisdom will give them better sight and hearing, and charisma will give them some mental abilities. Like if you have 13 then charisma, then your Steelmate can talk. And you do get a bonus to attack and damage rolls. You do get a cantrip from the wizard spell list, and eventually get more spells. But when you finish a long rest, you determine what spells you get randomly. On the plus side, for most of the components, you don't have to worry about that. The Steelmate handles that. So, you know how I compared this to the Eldritch Knight? I take that back. Now, whether this is better or worse than Eldritch Knight, that's a conversation for another day. It is more interesting.
Yeah, it's already more its own thing.
Mm. But then there's Monk. So, of course, I'm going to be biased. Uh, and I do like the sidebar they have about why a monk would be traveling the world. If you didn't break ties with your order, you were probably given a mission, and there's a few suggestions. It also appears that Ki is an awakening ability. Which kind of answers the question about whether or not monks are magical or not, or whether or not
They
Ki
now
is magic. This answers the question. It is. But as far as subclasses, we have the open palm, which is what it usually is, and the way of pain. I know somebody might go, "What about the way of four elements?" What about the way of four elements? That one sucked. But with Paladin, because of the approach that they're doing with Paladin, I don't think we're going to run into that guy problems. You know, that one asshole GM who wants to put you in a fall or die situation. The lawful stupid problem, essentially.
yeah.
Uh, there is also a mystery sidebar about a personal focus for paladins. If you use this optional rule, paladins will distinguish themselves from other divine spellcasters through a unique feature related to them adhering to an oath that guides their existence. This optional rule dictates that paladins can use either a holy symbol or personal focus to cast their paladin spells. A personal focus is a specific belonging of great sentimental value that symbolizes the paladin's commitment to their path. The player must justify to the leader the meaning and significance of said belonging. However, the paladin's companions may be unaware of it, and thus not understand the importance of a particular amulet, doll, or broken dagger. If the paladin's personal focus is lost or destroyed, at least a month must pass before the paladin can appoint another of their belongings as representative of their oath and usable as a personal focus. You can only have one at a time. So it's almost a alternate way to do a holy symbol that isn't as obvious and more personal to that character.
But how will everybody know and guess that the giant thing on my shield is my holy symbol?
uh, we do also have a sidebar about what happens if the oath is broken. You can try and get penance to get, and if not, you could abandon the paladin class and adopt another, in which case you lose all of the magical features from paladin. Or if you wish to do the corruption, the whole oath-breaking paladin, you know, the blackguard that was in the GM section and not the player's handbook. I do like that they go into detail about how the corruption is gradual, but it does change a few of your effects. Namely, you lose advantage on saving throws against madness and corruption. Instead of turning or frightening Ravagers of Canker, your powers apply to Fey. You cannot do radiant damage. Instead, you do necrotic damage. And meditation in sacred places has to be in cankerous nests instead.
I like that because the best way to do a paladin corruption
Mm-hmm.
is leaning into that side of the ends justify the means slowly.
Mm-hmm.
So like at first something that maybe other members of the party agree the paladin can see I think I see it your way, we can start like that, and then slowly that goes
Mm-hmm.
just snowballing into a mountain of terrible choices.
Yep. Something else I like is with the Oath subclasses, each one has a set of tenets.
Yeah.
That wasn't in core. I can say that. And I do the Oath of Devotion is nice and all. The Oath of the Raven I find far more interesting. This feels like an attempt to do the Avenger from 4th edition, but in a way that fits. Their tenets being there are several paths to the same destination. Strike as lightning. The end justifies the means, as long as the end is just and the means do not involve even worse actions. And stare into the abyss. Of course, the Oath of the Errant, which is meant to be the Arthurian knight errant. Uh, with the Ranger, I appreciate that they try to make the Ranger not suck. Unfortunately, because it's still using the 5e setup for the Ranger, it still does kind of suck. Uh, like Ranger is the most cursed class in D&D's history.
Rangers.
Like the concept of Ranger is great. The execution of Ranger, not so much. Especially since a lot of times everything a Ranger can do, a Druid can do, and then some.
Yeah.
And when it comes to Rogue, uh, it is largely what one would expect. Uh, I do like the naming conventions they gave with the subclasses. We do have the Thief if you want to go that route, but also Spy or Hitman. But then the Scholar, which this is a new one. Like there was not a Scholar class in Core. A lot of times one might argue, oh, Scholars would just be a type of mage. Nope, this one isn't. Instead, they utilize tricks. Like they have a bag of tricks. At first level, you can draw from your honed intellect. You have 4 trick points. You gain more as you gain levels. You can never have more trick points than the amount appropriate to your level. You regain them when you finish a short or long rest. At first level, you know 3 tricks, swiftness and 2 others. You gain an additional trick at 5th, 9th, 11th, 15th, and 18th level. Your pursuit grants other features that require you to spend trick points. And the trick save DC is 8 plus proficiency plus intelligence. So for let's see, the one of the starting ones you get is swiftness. So let's look at that. In the middle of battle, you are able to act effectively and without losing a second. On your turn, you can spend 1 trick point to take the dash, help, or search action as a bonus action. Alternatively, when you use the help action to aid a friendly creature in attacking a creature, you may spend 1 trick to extend the range of this action by to 30 feet instead of the normal 5 feet. You can also do this as a bonus action for a total of 2 trick points. You also
Like,
end up getting a feat at 2nd, 6th, 10th, and 14th and 18th level. Like,
nice.
The scholar class definitely is one that is a very flexible one. I'm not sure if I'd recommend it for first timers, but there's a lot of potential within it, and it's definitely the one class in here that isn't just a copy pasta. I guess I'd say that they're that scholar is a different kind of skill monkey. But with
It looks really fun if you get the hang of it.
Oh yeah.
It's unique as well, so.
But scholar is definitely for those who like to be the team player but don't want to do magic. And if you're running the lower fantasy end of Fateforge, I could see the appeal of it. But with sorcerer, I do like that they have a sidebar of surviving one's own power. But it is a lot of the stuff that sorcerers get is exactly what you would expect. I do like the darker sidebar of hunger for and theft of magic. Many people with a vested interest in Arcana are fascinated with the spontaneous powers of sorcerers, for whom awakening to magic seems so natural. Haunting rumors mention young sorcerers being kidnapped and subjected to experiments whose purpose is to steal the essence of what makes them innate spellcasters. It's said that some cultists sacrificed them to Zonim, the eerie lady of the night, in the hope of becoming wizards or priests in the service of the goddess. And of course, when it comes to sorceress origins, we do have a nice sidebar regarding attitude towards dragon-blooded sorcerers. You might impress kobolds. You might also attract the attention of kingdoms ruled by dragonborn nobility. So it is a double-edged sword. But we also have psychic sorcerers. Now, normally it would bug me that psychic is not treated as its own class and instead is a sorceress subtype. But at least with sorcerer, it would make sense to do so, and it is a little bit chaotic.
Everything about sorcerers is chaotic.
Yeah. So I'd say the psychic here is their attempt at doing a wild mage without it being just LOL random.
Yeah.
Then warlocks, which is one of those warlocks is one of those classes where the nature of it being a deal with the devil kind of thing never really follows through. At least in my opinion. like a lot of times warlocks. There's this notion of, oh, you're a very dangerous you're a dangerous caster. You're playing with stuff you shouldn't be. But you never really get the vibe of that. Though the abilities you get from Warlock are about what you would expect. Uh, on the other hand, I do like that they're going into a bit more detail regarding the packs that you might end up taking, as what will qualify as your patron are many. Some may be bonded to several warlocks, others can only sustain one agent.
Right.
And they go into what would be a good aligned patron, a neutral aligned patron, and an evil patron. With the Archfiend patron we have several potential ones that you could be aligned with, and they have their own they have different spell lists depending on which one you pick. They also give a few examples about what your packed boon might look like. Like, for example, the Pact of the Blade. If you serve an Archfiend, your weapon could be an axe made of black metal and adorned with decorative flames. If it's a primeval one, your weapon might constantly be surrounded by a light breeze.
That's really cool.
Mm-hmm. But the primeval one pact seems to be a more Fey-like pact. And then we have Wizard, which is another class that's gotten a bit of a bum rap because just getting more spells seems to be the beginning and end of it, which when you compare that with the other casters isn't as appealing.
Yeah. Are we going to have to take a short rest every time we want to cast anything with this?
Let's see.
Yes.
Yeah. I have been told by plenty of people in very enthusiastic tones that the whole short rest and long rest thing is the successor to at will, encounter, and daily from 4th edition. I don't agree with that one bit. Especially when the short and long rest is built around the idea of having your character have not one, but a set of encounters you're assumed to go through each session.
Yeah.
I'm not a fan of that. One thing I will give Fateforge credit here is that instead of just taking the spell schools and making them the specializations for Wizard, no, we have more specific ones. Like, we do have Arcane Specialist, which kind of fills that role. You know how Evocation was a subclass and the like?
Yeah. Like each school was a subclass.
Mm-hmm. No, and here that a lot of that is covered with Arcane Specialist. On the other hand, we have Disenchanter, which is basically a counterspell expert. Elementalist, which is self-explanatory, and War Mage, which feels like a better version of Blade Singer, uh,
Nice.
as well as Mystifier, which is Illusionist and Enchanter. Uh, and when it comes to languages, we obviously have the different languages, but I also like that we have a visual representation of them, and the fact that not every language has every single letter and in some cases sounds.
Right.
Uh, Sort of like how the Futhark languages don't have the soft C sound. Anytime there would be a soft C, it would be the equivalent of a K. Which does is a nice way to reinforce language.
Yeah, because otherwise you just everybody assumes you're playing
Hmm.
common or you just don't
Yeah.
make too much use of it.
And they go even further with a whole page dedicated to how exotic languages sound.
Nice.
Like, for example, deep speech is a clicking language with unsettling vocalizations that can almost sound like noise. Vibrating, creaking, and trembling sounds complement this mode of communication, making it hard for the humanoid vocal cords to mimic. Or demonic is a melodic tongue with a strange vocal aesthetic that seems to ring out in multiple echoes. Evil voices in cursed places on on melancholia might sound similar to polyphonic or diphonic singing. Someone who speaks this tongue sounds like they're speaking in multiple vibrating voices, drawing out certain syllables. And we do have, if you want to go with more grit, we do have a sidebar about reading and writing, uh, where you could speak but not write in the languages you're proficient in unless you are learned. You're considered to be learned if you have one of the following skills or tools: Arcana, History, Investigation, Nature, Religion, Calligrapher's Supplies, or a Forgery Kit. If you,
Neat.
mm, if you are learned, you'd write it next to the list of languages you're proficient in. If you're learned and proficient in the performance skill or in a musical instrument, you can read sheet music. Otherwise, you can only learn a tune if you hear it. Just write sheet music next to your list of languages if you can read and write music. That is a very nice move.
It really is.
Mm-hmm. Uh, and when it comes to multi-classing and feats, it more or less works the same way. Though I do like that they put in a sidebar about planning your multi-classing or planning your feats. I'm still
Yeah.
not a I'm still not a big fan of the fact that, unless I'm mistaken, feats are an alternate take when it comes to ability score improvement. I wasn't a fan of that 10 years ago. I'm still not a fan of it. Like, I would I would rather have I would rather have the option. I would rather have people get both. Tales of the Valiant kind of does it, but even it doesn't go as far as I'd like, and there is still the issue of feats being in one big dumb list because we've learned nothing. But I know we skimmed through a lot and we went through a lot of it very quickly, but when it comes
Most of
to
this was
hmm,
just the same as 5e
yeah,
anyways.
I think what makes Fateforge interesting is the context that it's put in.
Yeah, it's not the rules themselves, it's rather all that is surrounding them that is making them quite unique.
Uh, pretty much. And the fact that it grounds itself in a setting, as well as a bunch of little sidebars or little bits of context to help develop character.
Yeah.
And again, it really comes down to having a specific context. Now, if you're not a fan of some of the ways that the races and classes work in 5e, this might not help you. This might not win you over.
It's not like, say, when we reviewed Nimble, that is an overhaul to every single thing, but it's rather some really neat additions to make it feel special
Hmm.
and more focused to what it wants to do.
Yeah, this is not interested in doing a oh you can run your own setting. No, this has its own setting, its own tone of fantasy that it wants to go with, and it is very dedicated to that. It also has some interesting options for going with more heroic fantasy or darker fantasy if you want to take that route. So the modular system I'd say is one of the strongest points here, as well as the introduction of the scholar class.
Yeah.
Uh, but when we come back in about a week, we will be getting into the daily life of Ayana. And in the process, going more into what I think is the strongest aspect of Fateforge, which is its setting. So
Yeah.
keep an eye out for that. But until then, on behalf of the good brothers present and not present, my name is Mildra. I am your gaming monk. Stay fucking frosty, everybody.